Not comparable. This is not apples to oranges. This is lug nuts to grapes. Like, welcome to the Weekly Fix podcast, where we're just two friends talking about our passions within movies, TV shows, gaming, and comics. Thanks for checking out the podcast. We hope you like it.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for stopping by this week with us to get your weekly fix. My name is Jacob. I got my co-host Zane with me as always, and we have another fun episode where we're going to be talking about the brand new season 2 episode 1 premiere of The Last of Us, which is very exciting. We had another episode of Daredevil drop that we're going to be talking a little bit about, and we're coming up on the eve of the finale. So by the time you guys will be watching this episode or listening to this episode, the finale will be debuting tonight. So that's super exciting. Lots to talk about, some great content going on right now. But before we get into any of that, Zane, it's been about a week since we talked here on the podcast. What you been into and how are you doing?
Man, I have just had a great time. We had a fantastic weekend where we got to do a little bit of stuff for the church. I got to detail my car inside and out, which was great. Sunday service was pretty incredible. We had a great connect group, and then the worship service was just really good. I mean, honestly, every time I go to church and get to worship with fellow believers, it's amazing. But honestly, I felt like this week was particularly good. Palm Sunday, leading up to Easter, just Passion Week, kind of just everything kind of lining up. I had a great time. So that kind of like capped off a great weekend and then headed into a great week. So a good start to Monday. We're going to go see King of Kings tomorrow with the family, which I'm super excited about. And then, family's coming down this weekend to celebrate Easter with us. It's just going to be a good few weeks here.
Yeah, it's always fun. I'm excited for you guys to be able to go and watch King of Kings as well. And I'm also excited to see how Charlie does, because this will be her second movie, correct?
That's right. Ezra's first.
Oh, so you are taking Ezra to see it too?
We are taking Ezra.
Oh man, that's awesome. So that'll be a fun experience. You guys got to get a little family picture at the movie theaters to remember your first full family experience there, because that'll always be fun. But yeah, that's great. Like you touched on, we did have a great church service this past week. We're really just leading up to a really great time of the year. You know, summer's right around the corner. It's awesome during this time of year to be able to have like some stuff to do outside. You mentioned you got to detail your car, so it's always nice to have a nice clean car for a few weeks until it obviously gets dirtied up with all this pollen and stuff again. But luckily that's cooled down a little bit, and my allergies are definitely thankful for that.
Oof, man, my allergies were wrecking me. I think I talked to like 7 people who had sinus infections in my like small circles. So
Yeah.
I know it was a rough go about for quite a few people here in North Florida.
Yeah, I know I would take my car like through a car wash or something real quick just to kind of get some off of it, and you'd walk out the next morning and it was just covered right back up like you never even did anything. So yeah, it's crazy, but it does seem like we're starting to get a little bit away from that, which is super exciting. Just be able to go outside and actually be able to breathe, which you sometimes take that for granted when you walk outside and you're just, sneezing and coughing and sniffling all the time.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, so we have some awesome stuff to talk about this week. We're going to be talking about the season 2, episode 1 premiere of The Last of Us, which has been a long time coming. I'm super excited to get your take on this first episode. We're going to talk a little bit about what we liked, what we didn't like about it, because obviously we're going to have some complaints, because we wouldn't be a very good podcast if we didn't have any complaints. So I'm excited to hear Zane's take on it. We're getting into some stuff with the second video game, which is really exciting. I'm interested to see how it goes, because I don't know if you've heard this, but it has been renewed for a season 3, which makes me believe, are they going to extend the second game and, kind of make it a 2-season thing, but it's also going to be based off of the second game? Or are they going to start doing a little bit of Games of Throning it, where, they're just going to start doing their own thing because it is such a big hit? Maybe they're going to change the story up so they have a longer story to tell, get every last penny they can out of this IP, which we see a lot of them do. But I'm excited. I think it was a great first episode to get us back into the world. The acting is still phenomenal. I think these actors are doing just a fantastic job. Overall, the world is still really cool. I think they did a great job with, the time skip that we got a little bit of it. It didn't leave me like really questioning what had been going on too much. Kind of felt like life is just continuing as it was at the end of the first season. So when all of those things are coming together, it's really exciting. But I don't want to spend too much time on the non-spoiler part. But Zane, what do you have to say about like non-spoilers right before we start talking about the episode and the things we liked and didn't?
Yeah, so non-spoilers, this is just a great visual show. Kind of one of my complaints I was going to bring into the Daredevil episode is really watching The Last of Us showed me how terrible the image quality of Daredevil is. Like, it almost seems like it's shot in 720p, whereas this one is clearly like 4K cameras. Like
Yeah.
it looks incredible. I'm very happy with the quality and the care that was put into the cinematography. It's got beautiful landscaping. They had incredible set designs. So I'm very happy with visually how this show has looked. Now, this is a TVMA full out show. It is clearly going to have some things that we don't approve of, and we'll get into that with the spoilers a little bit as well. But it is a very mature show, so that obviously does cater to my desire a little bit less, as I do like the themes to be a little bit more adult oriented. However, sometimes it does take it too far. But this is a great start to the show. I think I'm definitely excited to see where it goes. I'm excited to see how they're going. And I don't know if they handled the time skip for me as well as maybe you did because I have less information about the video games. So I'm curious to see how they go forward with that, to see how they can fill in the gaps for me. I'm very intrigued. I really liked a lot of the scenes. One of the new characters, one of the scenes with Joel that we'll get to talk about in spoilers was very good. A lot of impactful moments in that kind of just get to entrench us in the world a little bit more. It all seems to make sense. It all seems to flow. And so I'm really having a good time with this one so far. And I'm excited to see where this continues. But there is just that little overarching stuff of like, man, there's a lot of stuff in this that I kind of like, uh, hedge my bets on just morally. So
Mhm. Oh, for sure. And we're definitely going to talk about that because, the type of podcast we are, I feel like we've done a very good job of voicing our opinions on those things. I don't ever want to go through a podcast episode when we're reviewing a show that we're watching or a movie or anything like that. And just because we're enjoying the story means that we can just turn our moral compass off. So we're definitely going to touch on some of those things because I think they are important to talk about. But again, we also, we know what we like want in a show, and we know what like our hearts are telling us is right and what's wrong and those things and what we believe to be true and whatnot. So obviously we're not going to harp on it like a lot because if you guys have been listening to the podcast for any amount of time, and if you're a new listener here, you'll get to know pretty quickly like what we believe in and all those things. So I am excited to talk about those things because they are definitely things that need to be talked about and definitely aren't talked about enough in this type of genre of podcasting. So I'm glad we get to bring something that might be a little bit different than a lot of other podcasts do. But one thing I do want to touch on that you brought up that I thought was interesting is you brought up the Daredevil and how much better The Last of Us just looks visually. One of the things I've noticed with that, because I also noticed it too, and when you've been watching some of the shows we've been watching, like Daredevil, you kind of do forget how good shows can really look until The Last of Us comes around. And you're like, holy cow, that looked really good. Do you think that is a product of maybe Disney knowing they have such a large viewer base, they don't really care as much? They think more kids will be watching. Less people that care as much about the visual stuff, so they don't really feel the need to do it. Or do you think that's more just a product of Max really putting it all out on the table and being willing to spend some extra money on those things to really just make it look like a full complete project?
I think it may even be a little bit somewhere in between, where it's not necessarily that they chose to not spend money on it, but also the fact that they like wanted a grittier look to it, which
Mhm.
I know kind of sounds funny to think like, hey, why would you do that? But it almost is like, oh man, we kind of want a little bit different of a look for it. And even though I don't agree with that, I think that may be some of what they were kind of thinking, like old school film vibes, which I
Mhm.
don't get from it. But I think that may be what the directors were thinking of. But then again, it could also just go back to the clear and obvious reason of, oh, we actually just didn't want to spend money on this.
Yeah. As big as Disney is, it feels like they are the first people that are willing to be cheap, which I think is so funny that we have like that. We're even having that conversation in the day and age we live because we all know if they wanted to, they could probably buy the most high tech, futuristic cameras that just produce the most beautiful looking film, but it just seems like they just aren't willing to sometimes. And it's frustrating because obviously these shows are worthy of it, but I think it does just probably come down mostly to they didn't feel like spending the money on it. Disney knows they can get away with certain things and stuff like like Max and Hulu when they have these projects. And obviously, Last of Us is already in that upper echelon. They know people are going to watch it, but that stuff matters more for them because if they do put out a show that not as many people have heard of, even though the game was as popular as it was, to get the new audience that they wanted to with the first season, it needs to look good. The story can only get you so far because if it looks terrible, people are going to be like, it was good story, but I just couldn't watch it. So I think that also has something to do with that. That maybe Max and these other companies, when they do put out these shows, they just have more pride in the things they're putting out because they are fighting for more viewers than something like a Disney project might necessarily be. Which I always find that kind of interesting when we have these, large scale projects like this.
Well, and I think the directors also have a little bit more pride in what is going
Hmm.
on as well. Like the fact of the matter that this is like it's almost like his IP with the director of The Last of
Yeah,
Us. Like he's telling a very important, crucial story to him. Whereas most of the time, what we're getting given from Marvel nowadays is, hey, here's an IP, do something with it, and we're gonna kill it in post. Like whatever you did, creative freedoms you took, like it doesn't really matter because the committee's gonna, pump out what is most profitable for the organization. So I think
yeah,
sometimes when you give somebody like Craig Mazin, I think is the creator of The
I think
Last
so.
of
Yeah,
Us. Um, like when you
or at
give
least the
him,
director, because I think Neil Druckmann is like the creator
is
of
that is it?
Naughty Dog and The Last of Us. I think Craig
Right.
Mazin is the director, though. Yeah.
Right. When you have someone who is as crucial, he's also Neil also directs some of this.
Yes. Yes.
Which is, you have the creator attached to it. I
Hmm.
think of Robert Kirkman, right? When
Oh
when
yeah.
you are the owner, it is your baby. You put more effort into it. You make sure it looks good. And I think that's kind of what we're losing is the ownership. Even like a lot of times where I work at, when an artisan feels like he owns the product, when it's like his area, it's his name is on the line for the work that they're doing, they do a better job. But when it's like, oh, it's just a collective group pushing something forward, there's less incentive to do good because you don't get to take that pride in your work. And so I think that may be more about what it is than any of the other factors that we touched on.
Yeah, it goes to show too with talking about the directors. You mentioned that with Marvel, like sometimes Marvel and Disney in particular is really bad about this. I feel like is they're willing to just say they have a big name actor, right, or a big name director and all these things, and they do exactly what you said. They do kill it in post, and maybe these directors, they just wanted the big bag of money that came along with directing a Marvel or a Star Wars project or something along those lines, and they don't have that feeling of it's theirs, it's their baby, like you mentioned. So I do like that correlation. I think that's something definitely to bring up because it does just feel like there's so much love put into the show, which is very evident, right off the bat in season one. You notice it, and you clearly notice it in season two. Just visually how it looks, they did take a lot of pride in it. So I think that's something definitely very interesting to touch on. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into some of these spoilers because it was not necessarily an action packed first episode as far as like getting us into the story, but a lot of things did happen. It did show us a lot of character development, even with the short amount of time we had with these characters, which I think is very impressive in and of itself that they were able to do that in the amount of time, kind of showing us how these characters have already changed from season one with that little bit of a time skip. I personally, like you said, you didn't necessarily feel as good about the time skip as I did, but I did still think they did a good job overall with it. So let's hop right into it, Zane. Season one or season two, episode one of The Last of Us. We hop right in. We're back in the town. Well, we kind of start off right where season one ended. We're back up on the hill. Ellie's asking Joel, is what you told me about the fireflies true? And he lies to her. And it kind of is a theme in episode one here that, there's something that's hindering Joel and Ellie from their relationship going any further. It's almost as if Ellie knows he lied to him, but she doesn't quite know what about. Maybe she has an idea of, but I don't think she knows the extent of it. What did you think about the start to this episode?
I thought the start was great, and I really loved the scene with Abby standing over the graves of the fireflies that Joel murked.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really impactful and kind of does show like some humanity there for
Mm-hmm.
what has been happening. Because the fact of the matter is, a lot of these shows, we just like brush off murder as if it's not, a big deal. And I love what Joel did there protecting his people. But at the end of the day, he still murked so many people. So
Yep.
you kind of have to set with the reality of what he's done is not good. And I know that he's setting with that, which I also like throughout this episode. But I like the intro. I like where we get to see just a slight recap of them on the hill, and then we get to go see the fireflies plotting his revenge. Uh, which I do like the 5-year time jump so that it makes sense for I I guess what we're going to get
Mm-hmm.
is Joel. getting hunted essentially by these people, as we get to see toward the end of the episode. But the fact of the matter is that he is still there's still so much that I don't understand that's going on with their relationship. You hinted that Ellie kind of seems like she may have been lied to, and maybe she knows that. I didn't I didn't know that that was exactly what they were trying to put forward. I didn't know if they were kind of trying to push forward that he had kind of told her and that she hadn't dealt with it well. That maybe, especially when he was talking to the therapist and when he starts crying and says, "I saved her." I didn't know if that was honestly what he was referring to, is that now she knows that he saved her the way he did. And so at the end of the episode, I'm saying, that's probably not it. It's probably just hinting at the fact that the weight of lies can really weigh you down, and that there is a cost to dealing with guilt. And I'm sure that has had to live with this guilt of, first off, killing everyone, and then second off, lying to Ellie for however long, knowing that she wanted to help.
Mhm.
So that's a big deal. And I really like the dynamics there of the weight of your sin, the weight of what's going to happen, that there is consequences for those things. So a very good start for that settings. I just kind of wish I would have had a little bit more adjustment period for Joel. I like that he is fully part of this community now, and even the little slight of you were an immigrant too at that one time. I
Mhm.
really like that from his sister-in-law. That was a good moment in my opinion. And then, oh man, it was just a good first episode with a few more complaints. But did you feel that at all, or is it because of the video games you kind of know what they were kind of hinting at with that relationship?
Well, and necessarily, like, I don't even feel like that's like any knowledge of the video game. I think the thing that really homered home for me is you did talk about the therapist scene a little bit, and she kind of comes out with something she had on her heart about how she hated Joel for what he did to her husband. Whether it was, we don't really get to see what that was, but obviously you can kind of come to the point maybe he was bitten, maybe he was infected, and Joel had to kill him. But maybe Joel did it in like almost careless way, a carefree way. I'm just going to do what I got to do, which we do see hammered home even a little bit more in this episode. With you similarly talked about how Joel's sister-in-law was like, hey, you were once an outsider as well, when right before that Joel was saying, hey, we got to take care of our own. I don't care about the people outside if we don't have enough resources to take care of them. So I think there's a lot of parallels that they did in this first episode that really pull the story together, which I really appreciated. And one of the things you touched on was, the moral compass, I think, is a good way to bring this about. Because yeah, we love that scene at the end of season 1 where Joel goes to the hospital. He's taking everybody out because he wants to take care of Ellie. And in our minds we're like, yeah, this is Joel, this is awesome. But shows don't often show the other side of that, right? Everybody in that hospital wasn't necessarily a bad person. They were doing a job that they thought was going to help humanity be able to survive. They were trying to find a cure. I'm sure these doctors and these people have been working at it maybe since the outbreak started, right? So I think this is a really great way to pull people in even more, to realize that, hey, Joel's not necessarily a good guy, even though he's, our favorite character, a fan favorite, all those things. He's done some bad stuff, and I think the show has done a really great job of kind of hammering that home in this first episode. You are seeing it with his guilt. We do see it with Abby being like, I want to get revenge. What he did to us hurt. It's not fair. I think she even says it's not fair. One of the characters in that little group says it's not fair. I love that, and I love that we're getting to see another side of it that we don't always necessarily get to see outside of our main characters.
Yeah, and it is kind of bold to take your protagonist and kind of turn him into a, I guess, a more morally gray character in this, because I
Mhm.
am assuming that he's not going to be the main focus of this story. Just from some of the stuff that I've heard about some of the complaints, was that he wasn't the main character of the second game. So I do know that that's kind of where they're headed. I don't know how they do that or whatnot. But yeah, and you touched on the therapist scene with not. I think you did a great job of saying like what he did, because that's exactly what I imagined. I imagined he got bit. Joe walked up, put a bullet in his head, and like walked off. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, it wasn't his fault he died, but he was the one who killed him. and that's exactly what he would do. What a good, like, I guess it would be a great critique on society for protect your own at all cost, because it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, we still need to care about people. There's so much like rhetoric even today, and I can't help but think of like what we're currently experiencing with our administration with illegal aliens, and how, well, like, just, get them out of here, like they're no good, they're useless. Well, no, like, they're
Mhm.
people who need help, and you still have to view them as people, regardless of how you feel it affects you. You can't just treat them like garbage. They're not lesser. They are human beings who need assistance, or they need a way of life. So whatever that takes, like, you have to be reasonable in the assessment of human life and human value, regardless of how you think it's going to impact you, or maybe make you a little less uncomfortable or a little less comfortable. But sometimes that's like, you have to look at those things as like,
Mhm.
you can't desensitize yourself from the fact that there are people that need. And I thought this did a great job at looking at that.
Yeah, and it's a fun conversation to have because I use the word moral compass, right? If any of us were in that situation Joel was in, they're really trying to hammer home, and again, that therapist scene I think really hits home with a lot of things. I think they did such a good job with that scene, but you kind of almost hear them talking about, Ellie's like his daughter. She even makes fun of him. Oh, she's acting like every 19-year-old girl ever has acted, hating her dad. And we would have all done, you put yourself in that situation where your daughter or something is, sure, she might be able to save the world with her blood. Like there's a cure that she has, but is it going to be easy just to like let it happen? Absolutely not, right? So they did such a good job of walking that line of, they do make you feel like, oh, Joel did some bad things, but then they bring you back in that scene and are like, yeah, that is like his daughter. Like, would any of us just be willing to just say, yeah, here she is, do whatever you need to? No, I don't think we would. So I think that therapist scene really was maybe the highlight of the episode just because of the emotion it brought into it, but also a little bit of humor, right? Like they didn't just make it fully impactful and weigh down on you. They had some fun with it, which I thought was great. And I think this show does a really great job of even in those gloom moods, they do a really great job of that's with Ellie's, dad jokes, right? Her little one-liners, something really grim could be happening, and one of them cracks a little joke, and it kind of lightens the mood, which is so realistic, right? How many times have you been in a situation where things aren't great, you're down on your luck, bad things are going on, but someone makes a little joke and you get to crack that smile and you haven't had a chance to in a while. And I think this show does a really, really great job of kind of bringing out your full range of emotions through these characters.
Do you think Bella Ramsey has been doing a good job with Ellie in this first episode, doing that as well? Kind of, because she
Yes.
she has a lot of kind of attention relief moments.
Mhm.
And you think she's been doing a great job?
Yeah, I think as far as the acting goes, I have no complaints from this first episode. I really enjoyed what every character brought to the table for their roles. I think she did a fantastic job. I do think she's also doing a good job, and she's really irritating me, right? She is playing that 19-year-old girl of just being, deliberately disobeying, doing her own thing. And it's really frustrating, but it is like kind of exactly how you kind of picture her character being after what we got from season one. But she's just 5 year older now. She's experienced more. She knows what she's capable of. So it's kind of frustrating to see that character be like that because you're like, oh, that's so annoying. Just listen to what people are telling you. But then we wouldn't have as good of a story at the end of the day. So no, I think she's done a great job so far with this first episode.
Yeah, and I would echo that. I think her acting is exactly what they are trying to invoke
Hmm.
with her character. I would agree. But kind of playing off of that, because I do think the acting is good, and I think her and Dina, Isabella is the actress's name. I think they've
Hmm.
been playing well off of each other. But I do want to touch on the fact that it just has to have another LGBTQ couple within a show, front and center. Obviously, in the first season, we got to see that in two episodes, not only with Bill, but then also with Ellie and her first relationship there in the mall, and now this. It's just like, this is just going to be a prominent thing throughout it. And we talk about the moral compass of um, just the murder and everything else that's already going on in the show, and then this is another thing that we as Christians have a stance against as well. Just a another deconstruction of the family and putting forward our own self desires opposed to that of what God has set and set forth and ordained of how a relationship should be. So this is just another point that it's like just another knock on the show for me. And I mean, they're playing the acting well for it. I don't have any complaints for that aspect for it. It's just the content behind it.
Yeah, and that was one of the things we were going to get to in this episode that obviously we're going to bring up. Obviously, we've made it a point to talk about these things on the podcast, just because I don't think I mentioned it earlier, not enough people are calling out this stuff for what it is. It definitely needs to be talked about, and it definitely needs to be, it's not right. It's not the right thing to be having in this show, and just period. We don't need it in any society that we're a part of. So it is frustrating to have these moments. And again, we don't want to come out in here and you make it sound like we're better than anybody. Everybody's sin is equal. Nobody sins. A sin I commit, isn't better just because it's not something like that, right? All sin is terrible, but it is something that has just been so prominently pushed that is so frustrating to deal with because it is wrong. We don't want to see it on this stuff. So yeah, great, everything that you brought up. I think it just hits home with we don't want to see it. It is frustrating. It's here. And it's almost gotten to the point where it's just something we have to, put up with. And if that's something you don't want in your household at all, this is a very good opportunity if you haven't had a chance to watch the episode and maybe you don't care about the spoilers as much. Yeah, it is pretty prominent in this episode. And it does appear it's going to be leading into the rest of the season. Again, I'm not quite sure how much of the game they're going to incorporate, but it is pretty heavily involved in the second game as well. So it didn't come as a surprise to me. I know it didn't come as a surprise to you either, even though you haven't played the second game because of how much they pushed it in this first episode. But it is definitely something to be aware of if it's something that you don't want to be a part of.
Yeah, and I like what you said there with everyone's sin is equal. This is one of the things I kind of harp on with almost most romance stories is that like adultery is just perfectly okay with and
Yeah.
prominently displayed. A lot of people love the Titanic movie, The Notebook, one of two of my least favorite romance movies because it's about cheating. Both of them are about cheating on good men or not necessarily good men in the Titanic scene, but specifically in the Notebook, and that to me is just as bad. Like I just like it's just frustrating to kind of see those things prominently and put up on a pedestal, as in this is the better, this is what you should be pursuing, this is the what will bring you happiness. Is you missed out on your soulmate, so cheat on your spouse. I just like, oh man, all of that just drives me up a wall because it's like, that's not what love is. That's what lust is. And so it's just challenging. But yeah, probably enough harping on that because there's a lot more to talk about. How do you feel about the progression of the symbiotes, not symbiotes, that's Marvel. The fungus creatures. I mean they're zombies, but I don't know what they call them. Are they crawlers?
Yeah, I think the easiest word to use is just infected. I think like most of these
Infected.
things we can just
Okay.
yeah. I think it's cool. I do think it's interesting because we're hopping right back into the story here, and we get to see that scene where they go on the patrol. I thought that was a really great. Talking about visually how this show looks. That was incredible looking. They're walking up this snowy mountain. They get to the top of it where there's like this little town. We see a black bear that has been taken out by some clickers and some infected, but he put up a good fight. There's quite a few bodies around there. We get to see them head into a little building where they heard a clicker, and they take it out with ease. But then Ellie falls through the building, and she's in like a new grocery store, looking like a little market type thing. And we get to see her being stalked by an infected, which was really exciting and really anxious. And my wife, when we were watching this, she was like, I just remembered how anxious this show makes me feel the entire time I'm watching it. And I think that's like, it's so true though, because it does always feel like every scene you're in, something is right around the corner. So I think that progression in the show is really fun. And it is needed for sometimes for things like this, because I think The Walking Dead is a great example of this, of where it kind of started to suffer a little bit was when the zombies became a non-threat.
Oh, for sure.
We feel how they got to, they just easily take them out. It almost feels like the only time they were ever actually a threat is when there was just so many of them that you couldn't escape. But, for the most part in The Walking Dead, they had hit them once in the head. they were just taking hammers and sledgehammers and just bashing through skulls. And they always could hide behind the fact, oh, their head's deteriorating, their skull's not as strong as it once was. La di da da. It does take away from that threat. So I definitely feel like this was much needed, and it definitely brings a level of excitement to the show, which we did see a little bit in season one as well. When we see that one clicker that comes up out of the ground, he's like Goliath type one. Like that stuff is
Oh
needed
man.
to keep you on your toes and to you never really know what's around the corner, and you need these, essentially your main villain of the show, the infected. You need them to always feel like a threat. So I'm definitely happy that they're incorporating that a bit more into it, and it does make it a lot more fun.
Oh, for sure. You said it was how on edge this show makes you. And I think that was really funny because when she fell through the floor and we get to see the infected on the wall kind of crawling, I
Yeah.
thought it was a cat. And I was like,
And then lo and
it's
behold.
no, well, no, like, and so I like I don't know, 15 seconds had passed and I looked at Chelsea and I was like, did you see what that was? And she was like, yeah, like a crawling human. And I was like, that was a cat, babe. And she was like, rewind it. So we rewound it, and I looked a little bit more intently because I knew what I was looking for, and I was like, oh dang, you're right. And then like the intensity in which I started watching that scene with, because I was expecting her to get a jump scare from a kitty cat the first time, and then
Yeah.
after that, I'm like, oh no, it is like an infected or like possessed person. Like something's going on that's not super great here. So that was very much an intense, good scene, I thought, especially after knowing that they kind of hunted and took down the bear, which was another
Mhm.
cool thing to think about and what they had done and progressed. So yeah, definitely need those to be a threat this season. And I think they are. I think this is definitely going to be a more challenge as we saw the fungus strands kind of going through the rooted ground pipe, which is
Mhm.
going to be a very interesting plot thread. I'm assuming in the next few episodes.
Yeah, so I think that is like, going back to your original question, it was definitely good and it was very needed because, again, it is frustrating when these things just become a non threat. And I think this is well executed. And I also love that they took the liberty to not just let it be a thing that happened. One of the first things Ellie does when she gets back to the town is she goes to like their council and she tells them that they're evolving and like things are happening, because that would be very important information to know when you're running a whole town like this. If they're starting to evolve, what's the next step? Are they going to be able to get into the buildings? Are they going to be able to walk, act like a human more than they do already in certain aspects? So I love that not only did we get that scene, but we also got told that, hey, it actually is a problem. Like it's something that's going to have to be handled at some point.
Well, and it makes sense because of the evolving the global warming, this thing evolved to withstand higher temperature heats.
Hmm.
So it's also pretty cool the fact that they're keeping the theme with this is an adaptive, very dangerous virus, fungal infection. So it's not just like, oh, it got powerful and it took this step. No, it just continues to get worse and worse,
Hmm.
kind of like viruses do. I kind of thinking like I had a conversation with a colleague today about tuberculosis and how dangerous it is if you miss a dose, like you now what you were treating it with won't be effective anymore because it adapts to what's been
Hmm.
treating it. So it's very interesting, very very grounded and realistic um, adaptation of a viral infection.
Now, one of the things, I just talked on was the council, right? I thought that was a very cool scene. I like that this town has that type of leaders over it and that it is more of like a group of people making decisions and stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong. Earlier in the episode, we do hear that, Joel is also part of the council because I believe Tommy's sister or Tommy's wife, Joel's sister in law, also says, oh, you're a part of that council as well. But Joel wasn't in that conversation. Do you think that was more so something because Ellie was involved in it and maybe she wasn't willing to talk if he was going to be there? Do you think maybe they just felt like this was best TV left out of? Or do you think there's more to that than that?
I honestly didn't pick up on that while watching it. Thinking back through it, it could be the fact that maybe they do a rotation, maybe there's a little
Mhm.
differences in it. Maybe that was a specific like
Council,
threat
maybe.
council.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be weird for Hit, like their best or second best fighter, not to be on the fighting council against the infected. I don't know. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't really think about that when I saw it. That's a great point out. So I would say it may be just because Ellie maybe didn't want, like, they knew that would be an issue for currently
Mhm.
how their relationship is.
Yeah, and I also like that they were able to tell, they do put a lot of like Tommy's wife seems to be very smart, and I love that she was like, Dina was lying, but Ellie was telling the truth. And I'm interested to see again how this does progress, because they do kind of brush it off after that, little conversation. They're like, we're 4 years from New Year's, can we adjourn this meeting? And they're like, yeah, let's get on with it. So I think that's gonna come back to bite them a little bit if we don't see in the next episode or two that get talked about more. I don't know that we'll even get to that point though with, some of these threats that are looming. You did talk about the strand of the virus starting to creep through the pipes that they were talking about. We do at the very end of the episode get to see Abby's group has found a town. I'm assuming they have gotten some leads that this is where Joel is. Maybe they've captured somebody, maybe they've talked to some people along the way that have kind of kept in contact with that town in some form or fashion. So I'm interested to see how this story progresses. But I think that's kind of the majority of episode one. We talked about all of those, the aspects of it, and overall, I think we're both pleased with how this season has started.
Oh, for sure. Definitely pleased with the jumping off point. The things I'm not pleased with, I knew were going to be there. So
Mhm.
just kind of setting with that through a mature show. But yeah, definitely a lot of threads I'm excited to pull to see where they go, and I'm hoping they don't do what my brain is telling me they're going to do.
What do you want to share with the cloud of the with the class, or do you want to
Oh,
hold on to that thought?
I just think they're gonna murk Joel pretty quickly, and I don't want that to happen.
Yeah. It's going to be an awesome show. If it's anything like the second game, a lot of people didn't like the second game as much as the first one because of some of the things we've even talked about, but it is still a really good game, when it boils down to it. If it had come out before the first one, it would have been just as proclaimed as the first one was. But sometimes when you have such a great big hit as the first one, it's hard to live up to that hype. So I still think it's off to a great start. I'm very excited to continue to watch it. And another TVMA show that we've been watching is Daredevil. Now, we finally got the first episode with the new writing crew on. And, we talked a little bit about in the past about maybe it'll help you with how you feel about the show. What did you think about this first episode with the new writing crew? Did it do some things that you wanted it to do? Did it, maybe make it feel a little more gritty, a little bit more mature in some things? Maybe the story progressed a little better. How did you feel about the new writing team?
So I think it definitely improved. No doubt about that. I don't think it felt more mature or anything like that. I felt like it was kind of. I felt like the show the entire time has had a very mature feeling to it. Obviously, those first two episodes were just far superior to what we got through the mid part of the season. With episode 5 being a standout for me, I really enjoyed the bank scene. The bank episode, I thought that was good. Maybe misplaced, maybe misused, but still just a great.
Mhm.
Like if that was a standalone comic book episode, like I kind of
Oh,
think of that
great
sometimes. Like
comic.
great
Yeah.
comic, love it, fun, interesting characters that we love. But no, this one was definitely a good episode. I was not bored throughout it. I was intrigued the entire time. I don't think they've done a great job with the character, with the side characters, giving them enough to really warrant kind of their screen time, while at the same time maybe rehashing some things that have been done. I really dislike Daredevil and his little love interest Heather. I think she's
Yeah.
awful. I don't like her as a person. I don't like her as an actress. Her saying she saved herself is the most frustrating thing I've seen. It's like I saved myself as Daredevil literally was beating the mess out of this dude as I was bleeding to death, and then I stood up and shot him as he stabilized my wounds where I would have just bled to death. So, you know, the being so unaware of your own mortality and the fate that you would have been in without the advancement, and then comparing him to Muse is just like, dude,
It's
get a.
infuriating.
It's so infuriating. And like we've had this done better. We've had the Punisher compared to Daredevil in the best episodes of television for Marvel that we have ever gotten. And that's actually a compelling argument. That's actually something that is worthy of being discussed,
Mhm.
right? Like Punisher puts them down, they don't get back up, right? They're still bad people. Muse is murking innocent
Yeah.
people and using their blood to draw murals.
Yeah,
Like,
not comparable. Not
not
comparable.
comparable. This is not apples to oranges. This is lug nuts to grapes. Like, like completely different forms of matter with different uses. Oh man, I was like, we have literally had this done better in this predecessor's TV show. Like, don't try to rehash this. Like, do something else with it. So that was an episode where I was like, deep sigh, or a point in the episode where I was deep sigh. But I want to kind of get off of that because, man, I think everything with her is awful. I don't like Matt and her's relationship. I think he's doing a bad job in it. I think she's doing a bad job in it. Don't like anything about it. Um, but man, everything with Bullseye coming back, really enjoyed. I think Wilson Bethel is doing a better job this time as Poindexter than he did the first time, and I think he did a great job in season 3 of the original Daredevil series. How did you feel about his encounter with Matt in the prison?
Well, first off, I just think, you guys probably noticed if you've watched us for a few times, we always try to find like a little hook. We definitely just found the hook for this episode. It's not apples to oranges, it's lug nuts to grapes. So that's gonna be something that hopefully sticks around for the podcast for a little while. No, I thought this episode did some things very well, and one of the things I want to touch on, which you're speaking up a little bit, is I feel like they hit a lot of story points in this episode and didn't feel us like leave us hanging for a lot of it. I feel like we got to a lot of points, and a big part of that was the bullseye stuff. I felt like I personally thought if the writing team continued as it was, we definitely would have seen him in the prison and all that stuff, but we wouldn't have got to see the escape in this episode. And that would have been something we waited for like the finale or something. It would have been kind of
Oh,
frustrating.
okay. So before you touch on anymore, do you think that he was in the original writers? Because I think from what I saw this episode, it showed this was a complete post ad for the entire show. I don't think Bullseye was in it at all for the first writers.
Yeah, and it may not have been. Most of what I was saying was just like if they would have had him in the story, this would have been something
Gotcha.
that took 3 episodes to get
Okay.
to.
Okay, makes sense.
That's something definitely we could talk about maybe at the end here is, what did we think got cut? And I definitely think that could have been because it almost felt like it was filmed a little differently, the scenes that he was in. So, that kind of does lead to that, they would have had to completely reshoot any scenes he was a part of because he wouldn't have been a part of them originally. So I could definitely see that point holding true. But yeah, I think some of the things that they did I was happy about because it did feel like we got some of that story developing. I do love that he's back. I think Bullseye is such a cool character. I love the way they plotted his escape. I love the way that he kind of did play Matt. I think maybe the whole purpose of him asking for Matt to come was maybe he does want to tell him what happened. Maybe he did get hired by Wilson Fisk. Maybe all these things are true. But I think he knew that he could get to Matt maybe a little bit differently than he could anybody else, and maybe use that to play to his advantage. And maybe he didn't anticipate getting his face bashed in and, having the cops call in and say, hey, he's hitting himself in the face on the desk, all that stuff. But I love the way that they did play into it, with him taking his tooth out, ultimately being able to use that to take out a guard later on, which was very cool. Did it make any sense? No. Was it cool to see? Yes. So I did like his involvement in this episode. And again, I think they just did a great job of interweaving him back into the story with where we got to by the end of the episode.
So okay, so you also were not satisfied with the tooth thing because I
No.
honestly I honestly kind of liked it just with how silly Bullseye's powers
Yes.
are. The
Yes.
fact that he never misses and he never misses with anything. So I
Yep.
like the tooth portion where he would have been able to hit the eye just enough to get like a point uh of like advantage, right? Like
Yes.
it's not much. It's just like it didn't kill the officer, but it was enough because I mean if you get hit in the eye with something at any velocity, like it's going to
Yep.
cause you to cover up or have some discomfort. Chelsea was not about it at all. She's like, that's so
So
stupid,
dumb.
so dumb, hate it. And I was like, I don't know, I kind of like it. Like he is like a super advanced what is it like a reflexes
Marksman, really.
character which allows like
Yeah.
his abilities to be a little bit heightened. I mean, the dude can literally survive getting chucked off of a 4-story building, so he's clearly got some type of advantages. But no, I actually kind of like that scene, which is funny. I know I'm usually the critic for that kind of stuff, but I was like, I don't know, I kind of like this. Spit a tooth in the eye, and I thought it
Yeah.
was some like really poetic justice that Matt not being willing to defend him and get him out is what got him out.
Yeah.
Like, "No, let me smash your head on your table and give you exactly what you need to be able to escape," which I thought was really cool.
Yes. Yeah, no, like I said, I thought it wasn't realistic or anything, no, but it was still
No.
fun to see. So, yeah, I echo all those same things as well. That was very, very funny and very comic booky, which is another thing we were kind of talking about just a second ago with the bank scene. This episode definitely had some of those things, which I think are important for Marvel projects. Obviously, it might sound a little redundant saying that because comics are what started all of this stuff, but it is important to have those moments throughout a show where you're like, I could see that in a comic panel. And I feel like this episode did that a few times, which was really cool to see. So yeah, I liked his involvement back into the story. Again, I just like his character, so it's cool to see. I also really thought the dance was pretty fun. It was a really great way of kind of getting everybody into a central place, which sometimes can be hard to do and not make a lot of sense. Like, why would Matt have just showed up here? Well, because his girlfriend was there, right? It makes sense and stuff like that. So I also like that involvement into this story of actually feeling like they cared enough to make sure it made sense as to why we got everybody together. How did you feel about like that philosophy of pulling everyone to one central location?
Um, don't I don't hate it. I didn't really love well, first of all, because of like I don't like Wilson Fisk as like this mayor scene. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
fine. It's okay. Like, I can deal with it, but I don't love it. And I finally did like in this episode that it seemed like he was playing people more villainously. It did
Mm-hmm.
seem like he was getting people to actually do some work for him. It was actually holding some threats and getting to see like just how scummy he is. I didn't love the invitation. I didn't love Charlie Cox not, or Matt Murdock, not selecting to take the invitation immediately and kind of get to see what's up, get to see him channeling him. I also didn't like him not being able to split his attention. I would have liked to have seen him been able to pay attention and at the same time listen in on those conversations. But I really loved how they showed him using his senses. You know, it was all like practical camera effects where it was like in on himself and then zoom out aspect ratio change, or almost similar to a fisheye camera lens where it's like, yes, normal people would only see this, but because he is, you know, the superhero that he is, he's actually seeing the full picture. And I really thought that was cool. And I thought that was a great point of the dance scene that we got to see was him using his powers. And I think honestly the best character almost development, I would say, in this episode was definitely BB Urich. Getting to see her intelligence, her side, where it honestly seemed almost that Wilson Fisk's right hand man was playing her. We got to see like, no, she's actually been playing him the whole time, which
Mm-hmm.
is really good for her character. That's needed, especially with how important and crucial she's going to be going forward. It's always important to have that journalist who's on your side who can kind of flip the public's opinion to get everything to go the way it's supposed to go. And I really enjoyed her aspect of it, especially with the history of Fisk killing her uncle. It almost seemed as if that was like not known, but the fact that, hey, not everything I write is under my name. Like, I'm getting here for a reason. I really liked all of that.
Yeah, no, I liked her character. It is one of those things. She's kind of been an almost an annoyance for me in the show a little bit. This episode did a lot for me that I was like, okay, I like where her character's going. I like the development that they're getting her. They're not making her just seem like kind of like an idiot. She is pretty smart and intelligent. I like that they were able to showcase that. And again, I think that character development was really good. One thing I wanted to touch on, I almost completely forgot about. We did get to see Adam in this episode again, and we
Oh,
got to see
dude.
how Vanessa. I think it's Vanessa. I think that's her
So,
name.
yes.
Yeah. We get to see her like kind of cold shoulder him a little bit, and we get to see what happens there. Now, obviously, it's not exactly what I wanted to happen. If you guys want to hear what I wanted to happen, definitely go listen to last week's episode because I had a pretty awesome idea for it that maybe they should have done, and maybe they should have hired me on just for that one scene alone. But what did you think about that?
Oh, I was thinking, dang, Jacob called it. I was thinking this was pretty almost deadpan to exactly what you said. I thought that was beautiful. I thought it was incredible the emotional state of a madman of Wilson Fisk, where he is not emotionally stable enough to deal with the problems himself, and the vindictive, controlling aspect of him to be like, "Hey, you made a mistake. You slept with him. You fix it," and to make him take take out Adam. Oh man, and then her being willing to do it, right?
Yeah.
Which she knows what's going to happen if she doesn't. Like she's toast. She's already tried to have him killed. If she doesn't make this right, it's going to be bad. So I thought that was wonderful, very
And I
very
think
top notch. And dude, I love that you called it because I didn't really see it coming.
Yeah, I was hoping that it would have gone just a little differently because I thought it would have been cool. But I think what this scene really did for me in particular was it showed how like dude, Wilson Fisk is evil, man. Kingpin is not a good guy. And this is like almost one of the worst ways to go about something. Like this is just like pure evil causing someone else to do something like that with someone that at some point they may have loved. And so I thought that was a really great, choice, very great story development for him as a character personally, because I want to see more of that. And you did touch on a little bit. We did get to see him starting to get his way a little bit more at the dance. We get to see him calling in some of these other, wealthy people, maybe people that have some political influence in the city. We get a little bit of a sword master name drop, which was pretty cool. I'm excited to see if that goes anywhere. So yeah, I think they're doing a good job of starting to make him really feel like a villain. And I feel like that's probably more credited towards the new writing team because up to this point, we've seen a little bit of it, but not necessarily to where I feel like it should have been with a character like Kingpin.
No, for sure. And that's been one of my biggest complaints is him as mayor hasn't been evil enough
Hmm.
for the position that he's getting. It seems like it's been a cop out of like a Donald Trump parody more than it's actually been Kingpin, which I really would like to rather get Kingpin than them trying to water him down.
Yeah,
So I personally loved it. So love to
yeah.
get to see him being more evil. Now, yeah, I mean we got some good scenes with him, wrecking Adam at the same time as Daredevil's wrecking
Hmm.
Muse. Like we got some cool scenes throughout the show with him. But as total, I think he would not be the top notch villain that we know he is. But you know, we're kind of coming to see his own. I think we touched on the swordsman drop again. I think this is another add-in. I think this is another add-in to the show that they really didn't have in the first one. I think in the first cut of this season, I don't think the swordsman was in it. I think this is a late add. And maybe one of the reasons I feel like his addition in the mid season, I think it was season episode 3 or 4, when Wilson Fisk had that party and he had I thought that was a bad Fisk look. I didn't really love that. But now we kind of get to see what he should have done at that first party and the power that he should have been wielding, especially with as cynical as he is and as intelligent as he is, swaying the people. He would have initially had blackmail on all those people. He would have known
Yeah.
exactly who they were. There wouldn't have been any question. So I like the fact that now, hey, we're getting to see swordsman. You know, I'm gonna out you. I'm gonna kill you. I'll have my dogs. I'll have my dogs jump on you. And dude, honestly, getting to see the vigilante SWAT team put that paparazzi's
Oh, and the
hand in
friar.
in the fryer. What?
Yeah.
In front of their police chief? What a wild move. Like you have no power here. Um
Yep.
like wild moment. How did you feel about that dynamic?
Oh yeah, and I agree. Like that's what I was saying. It feels like this new writing team is making Fisk what we wanted him to be, and I think this episode proved that. With the blackmail theme was very cool, but also like his SWAT force you were just talking about, saying we don't answer to you anymore, right? We answer directly to Wilson Fisk. We don't care about what you say. You can try to have us you take our badges away. None of that matters anymore. We're an elite group in our own territory now. So I loved that. I think it was really great. This gets me more excited for what I feel like Punisher is going to do to these guys, right? Like I can't wait to see that happen because I feel like that's him. The way they've set up this SWAT team this season doesn't feel like a Daredevil issue. This feels like a Punisher issue that's going to get resolved. So I am very excited about
Oh
that. So
man.
I think they did a really good job of making us hate these people that we already didn't really like, but really giving us a reason. Like, man, these guys really are terrible people. I think they executed that very well.
Yeah, no, I love that point. of that this is a Punisher solution. Like this is a
Yep.
Punisher problem that needs a Punisher solution. Some
Yep.
things have Daredevil solutions, some things have Punisher solutions, and I would agree. People using his armor, his tattoo, and doing atrocities in his name need to get corrected by the Punisher,
Yep.
especially our boys in blue. If the boys in blue are being this criminal and this corrupt and this awful, then yeah, let's go ahead and fix it.
Yep.
So I agree. And that would be a great setup for our second season with some actual John Bernthal, Frank Castle
Mhm.
addition. And man, it just makes me sad that we didn't get a true continuation throughout this season because it just feels like we wasted so much time with Muse. We wasted so much time getting Daredevil back in the saddle. We wasted so much time with White Tiger, and that really not paying off because of the lull immediately after.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I think it's good to be back, and I really like the blue tinting on the Bullseye episodes. I don't really know what they were going for there, but it was very thematic and I liked it. I did enjoy it, which
Yeah.
I know may sound stupid, but I did enjoy that. I thought it was a cool way to show off him and kind of him just focusing in on those moments.
Yeah, for sure. Now, the biggest thing that happened in this episode, obviously, comes at the end of the episode. We do see Bullseye is fully out of prison. He's found his way out. I think they did a cool job of showing how he gets out. Very Bullseye-esque. He puts on a police uniform that he probably found from one of the people that he killed while he's busting out of the prison. We see him get on the bus, has a little bit of a conversation with one of the officers that almost looks as if he's going to get caught, but he kind of plays it off with the swagger that he has. We do see him make his way to the dance, and we see him put his sights on Wilson Fisk, which brings more thought process to the thought that Wilson Fisk probably did hire him to kill Foggy. And then we do get that little scene during the dance where it feels like Daredevil has figured out that it wasn't Wilson that had that idea, it was Vanessa, which I'm really excited to see how that story develops. But the biggest thing is here we see Bullseye. He has his sights on Wilson Fisk. He's about to pull that trigger. He pulls the trigger, and lo and behold, who jumps in front of him? The last person we would have expected to take a bullet for Kingpin, for Wilson Fisk, is Daredevil himself, which I think plays very well into an earlier part of the episode that Bullseye actually says, where you take care of your, I forget the exact wording, but it was almost keep your friends close and your enemies closer, almost along those lines. I forget the exact, I wish I would have wrote it down, but kind of seeing that play out. What did you think about Daredevil of all people being willing to take a bullet for Wilson Fisk?
Yeah, I love that you pulled in the what Bullseye said to Daredevil there in the thing, like a true hero defends his worst enemies,
Yeah, that's what it
which
was. Yeah,
which I don't know if that's what they were going for, if that was ringing true to his Christian roots. Pray for them that curse you.
yeah. Mhm.
Do good to them that despitefully use you. Make sure that you bring up those values, like tapping into Matt's his Catholic roots, where it's like, hey, like yeah, you may be going through a hard time here, but you know what's right. You know what you should do, and that's the reason you have this moral compass is because you serve a higher power. And so I don't know if I love him jumping in front of Wilson Fisk at this moment, especially with his supposed loved interest there, all the innocent people. You kind of need to just make sure you go stop the threat at this moment instead of taking the bullet for Wilson Fisk. I didn't like this story point. I
Okay, interesting.
I I don't love him jumping in front of Wilson Fisk just because it seems out of character for kind of how he is. Like I can get him saving him, like knocking him down and maybe taking something, but jumping in front of him in that moment seems a little unhinged and ill thought out for Matt, and I don't love that. I
See,
know that's probably a hot take for me, but
I think the thing I liked most about it was how unexpected something like that was. Because you don't ever think of something like that happening, especially with these two characters that, they're almost like the yin and yang of each other. They both hate each other, but they almost have to have each other to exist. you know? And so I think it's very interesting thought process. Obviously, Matt is playing some game where he feels like he needs to maybe potentially keep him alive. There's information that he needs from him. But it is a very interesting thing because none of that matters if you're the one that ends up dying, right? So I thought it was very interesting. I think that's probably the thing that I liked most about it was the shock factor. Maybe not necessarily thinking it was what made the most sense, but I do love those moments where we're like, whoa, I did not see that coming. And I feel like that definitely delivered here.
Yeah, I definitely didn't see him jumping in front of a bullet for Wilson Fisk. That was by far crazy and not foreseen by me. But hey, I don't hate it. I just don't like it.
It goes back to that you're talking about, like we're talking about, like how this is like feels like a comic book. This almost feels like this episode would be like, oh dude, this is the comic book where Matt takes a bullet for Wilson. Like that would be like what everyone remembers from that one issue. So I think that's kind of fun to think about it that way. But yeah, that's the Daredevil, last episode before the season finale, like I touched on right before when we started the podcast. We're on the eve of the finale. Zane, how do you think this story is going to wrap up? Do you think it's something we're going to be satisfied with the ending? Or do you think the fact that this was originally supposed to be an 18 episode season one is kind of going to rear its ugly head here in the finale, making us feel like we just got left with a whole bunch of nothing?
I don't think there's a possibility that I will be satisfied with this just because of uh how much of the middle of this was meh for me. I
Mhm.
thought we had a good start. I thought we had a decent next run, and then everything in the middle has been like I just that's kind of how I felt with it. So I don't know. I feel like we're gonna get this next season, and we're gonna be like, yeah, we definitely could have used that 18 episode initial run. What they said they were gonna do, uh, but that's okay as long as they're already shooting it, they're already planning for it. It's in the works, so it can't be that far behind. The real issue in crime would be not having it already planned to go forward, kind of like the Moon Knight, right? Like we get
Yeah.
one of the best shows with the most potential, drop with incredible production, great acting, and then you just don't touch it for 4 years or whatever it's been. So that would be the real crime against this. I think it's going to be okay because we know it's coming, but yeah, I don't think I'm going to be satisfied.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting to see, how we do feel after this finale, because it does feel like there's so much left that we aren't going to get touched on, and it does feel like I feel like we are going to get left with like, oh yeah, we were definitely supposed to be getting a lot more than this, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because of what you touched on. Like we do know we're getting a second season. I think I might have heard. Correct me if I'm wrong. You know this better than I do. Was there talks that they're getting a third season renewed for this already?
I haven't seen a third season renewed
Okay.
for this, but that doesn't mean it's not.
Yeah, I might getting this confused with something else. But yeah, so I do think that's definitely something that look forward to. Is we do definitely have another season. I am interested to see where this one's going to rank for me after season one, because there have been some points of it that I have liked. You touched on earlier the scene in the dance with him using his powers, being able to focus in and all that stuff. I really like how they've utilized that in this show, which I feel like they've always done a pretty good job with the Daredevil shows. But something about this season has I've really enjoyed seeing him utilize his powers the way that he has. I think one of the biggest atrocities that we've gotten is just the sheer lack of him suited up. We did just get through another episode where we don't get to see Daredevil in full uniform, which is so frustrating because that's one of our favorite parts as superhero fans is when they get to don their uniform, their outfit, their costume. It's so fun to see our characters the way we always think of them. And I think that's been one of my biggest issues with this season. But hopefully, the finale gets to do a little bit more with that. Maybe we do finally get to see him suited up. I really don't know how we're going to get that with us really only having one episode left and where the last episode ended. It does kind of feel like this one's going to be kind of scrambling to get to a part where it feels like we can take a break. So definitely interested to see how it all plays out. You obviously know we are going to have a full review for the season once this is up, which I'm excited to talk about because this was your most anticipated show of the year. It has been a little bit disappointing for you, but maybe this finale can pull it around a little bit and make it feel a little better for you when it's all said and done.
Yeah, and I hope it really will because it might. It might.
So that's going to be it for this episode. I think we've touched on some great things. Two big shows, one of them coming to an end, one of them just starting. So lots of fun stuff to talk about in the future. We are going to be having an episode that we haven't had in a while here coming up. We're going to be doing a ranking episode. So if you guys listening have anything that you guys would like us to rank, we've done Zane. What's some of the stuff? I know we've done like Christmas movies, we've done car movies. What are some of the other ranks that we've done?
Yeah, we've done top five side characters. We did top five Pixar films, and I think those are our four top
Mhm.
rankings so far that we've done. We've done a few. We've done characters in Marvel. Our
Yep.
top five or three characters in Marvel.
I
But
think we did a
yeah,
villain episode.
we did our top five Marvel villains. So
Yeah. So those are the type of things we're interested in, or if there's something like that out there that you guys want to hear us talk about, definitely shoot us a message. You can reach out to us on Instagram. We do have an X. There's plenty of ways to get in touch with us. So definitely reach out. We do have a pot or a Discord. So if you guys are interested in joining that, you guys are obviously more than welcome to do that. We have a suggestions section of the Discord that you can come in there and say, hey, I think you guys should do this for a top 5 episode, and we'll definitely be excited to talk about those because those are always fun. We have a great time putting those together. It causes us to do a little bit more research and sometimes question our decisions a little bit more, which is a lot of fun. And sometimes we have to make some tough ones. I know when I've been doing my rankings, that sometimes I'm like, man, I really don't want to leave this character out or this movie, but I just don't feel like it fits. And I'm sure Zane, you feel that same way.
oh, for sure. And we actually have already got a request for a ranking. Um, and that is top five Marvel quotes,
Okay.
which I thought was super interesting. I don't know if we'll do that this time, but it's definitely on my radar. I've been thinking about it, giving a little heads up, kind of waiting for a little break in the content to kind of be
Mhm.
able to drop that.
Yes.
But it is something worth thinking about. So
Yeah, but if that goes to show literally anything we are interested in for a top 5, I mean, we will do quotes, we'll do characters, we'll do shows, movies, any of that stuff. So definitely feel free to reach out to us if that's something that you guys are interested in. You're like, hey, I'd really like to hear your guys' thought on this. So definitely open to that. Now, Zane, real quick before we get to the end of it, I know there was a big Baldur's Gate 3 update that you're very excited about. I think this is the last update of this game's lifespan potentially. I'm sure they might do some little things here and there because with this game as big as it was, sometimes it's hard to just let it sit. And I know the developers of the game probably always want to tweak some little things and add some stuff here and there. But we do like talking about games. So Zane, why don't you tell us a little bit about this update?
yeah, so we are getting the potentially biggest Baldur Gate update since the game release. We are getting crossplay, which is a big thing for most people. The thing that the game was really lacking, more than anything else. But not only are we getting crossplay, which is just a massive undertaking apparently with how difficult it was for them to roll this out. Eight patch. This is their eighth patch. We're getting a ton of bug fixes. We are getting 12 new subclasses, which
Oh, okay.
essentially would be like playing the game all over again. So we're getting Pact of the Blade Warlocks. We are getting a Shadow Sorcerer. We are getting a Hill Giant Rage Barbarian. Uh, Oath of the Crown, Paladin, just a swashbuckling rogue, and a ton more. So, really opening up those dynamics. And when they add those subclasses, it's not like you just get powers, but those subclasses also have dialogue content and really expand the game with the choices that you can do. There's just millions upon millions of threads that you could weave throughout this and just make it so big. So that's massive. Also, in addition to that, they are expanding their mod uh, accessibility and developer. So they are making a map developer in the game, which for those of you who love D&D, this is just going to be wild that you can use their simulator to make your own homebrew maps for characters and play throughout your own storylines for that aspect of it, which is going to make this game just kind of like stop being ran by Larian and being able to be modded and created by you guys, the audience, the people who are playing the game. And then I believe they're also opening up storylines so that you can add to the game yourself for some of the content aspects of that. So just a crazy amount of updates in this one. But the big thing for me are the new subclasses and then the crossplay because that'll allow a few of my friends who have been hesitant to play because they don't have PC or their PC suck to not pick up the game. It's good that they're going to be able to hop on and enjoy this really awesome uh, game that allows so much creativity.
I'm one of those friends, if you guys were curious, that their PC they just don't trust to run this game. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to hop into this. If you guys didn't know, me and Zane have been playing Dungeons and Dragons. He is our DM, and he's put together an awesome campaign. It has been an absolute blast playing through it. But since we started doing our actual campaign in person, I've been like, man, I really wish I could play Baldur's Gate with my friends and stuff like that. So perfect opportunity for me. I think that was a great, insight into some of that stuff, and it is something that we enjoy. We do like playing games. While we might not get to as much as we would like to sometimes, it is fun when we do get like these big updates for the games that we really do enjoy. And I would probably venture to say Baldur's Gate 3 might be your favorite game of all time at this point.
Um, I think with a little bit more fellow interaction, I think I could
Yeah.
say that. I personally, with just how little I've got to play with friends, I would say
Hmm.
that's probably not the case. It is my favorite solo game of all
Okay.
time, for sure.
Yeah.
But I have too many good memories playing with my friends and loved ones, other games that it really just can't take away the nostalgia of those moments with camaraderie. But with enough time, I could see this one kind of getting there. So
Yeah, for sure. So that's super awesome, guys. Like I said, I just want to touch on that real quick because it is something we like to talk about. But we do want to stick you all around for listening to us ramble on about The Last of Us. We had some Daredevil talking, and we ended out with a little bit of video game stuff. So touched a lot of things there, even though we didn't have a ton of content to talk about this week. But it's sometimes nice to be able to really sit down and focus in on a few things that we've been enjoying, and it's always nice to have those little bit of lulls in the entertainment community. We've been talking about that the last couple weeks because we just got through an absolute crazy season of stuff. So it has been nice only having a show or two to watch each week. So I'm definitely enjoying the extra free time that we have, but it's not going to last long. Movie season is up on us. Zane already mentioned he is heading to the theaters tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to his King of Kings review. You guys can definitely look forward to that as well. But that's going to do it for this week's episode of Weekly Fix. Again, if you guys do enjoy this content that we're putting out, make sure to give us a rating on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe over on YouTube, wherever platform you're listening to us on. Make sure to just, interact with us there. We always love that little bit of interaction that we do get. So we're always open to anything like that. Again, get your submissions in if there's a top 5 episode that you guys would like to see us do. We're super excited about that. It's always fun. So yeah, lots to talk about in the future. We're not going to quit doing it anytime soon. So again, thank you all so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week for another Weekly Fix.